Yeah.
Ah. And here we go
All right. All right.
with Hex Hector.
Yes, sir.
Ready for Nicky Siano.
No way.
Come on, let's go. Yeah, yeah. With Fred Stack and Marvin Blue. Along the way, special guest for you.
This is like real radio.
I had to do something, right? Real radio.
Ready for Nicky Siano.
Come on, let's go, baby. Yeah. All right. That was nice and
like
wonderful.
I love that. I wasn't prepared for that.
There's Hex Hector in the house.
A theme show.
Hex Hector in the house, baby. But we won't make him nervous because, you know.
He's already nervous.
He's already nervous.
I'm dying back here.
You're fine.
Somebody bring me a
I
towel.
love your ink.
Thank you, baby.
You need a towel? Some
No, I'm
paper
okay now.
towels, Malachi. Please.
I'm good.
Please, we got all these people behind the
Give me a
scenes.
few minutes.
There's Fabian. Fabian.
Hi,
Say
everybody.
hello,
Hi, everybody.
Fabian.
Hi, everyone.
That's Fabian. He is our producer and my partner in this gig. And
Partner
you-
in crime.
Yes. And, you know, we've been asking and begging and saying please a lot, but I want to tell you something. We need money. We have spent a lot of money for this setup and rig, and now we're going to go out to the Good Room on June 26th and do a live podcast at the Good Room. And you know what? It's going to be free. So we want to keep things rolling this way. It's at 7 p.m., by the way. We want to keep it rolling with the no charge, and you can see it on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you tune in. But we can't do that without your help. And I'm not asking you to give 10, 20, 30, anywhere all over the world. Everybody who looks at the podcast, if you can give us just $1, everyone $1.
No
If
amount
you-
is too small.
If you give more, that's great. We have all these incentives to give more. But so far, we're getting 22,000 looks. All we need is $7,000. So figure it out. If everyone gave $1, we'd be twice our goal. If you want to give $2 or $3, fine. We're not asking for a lot. So it's GoFundMe.com/Nicky Siano Live. And you can see it right here on the bottom of your screen. GoFundMe.com/Nicky Siano Live. We appreciate all the help. Nothing is too small. Well, you know, some things are too small. Under 4 inches, I wouldn't bother with. But I got to talk to you about that, too. But first, before we talk about, I have a few announcements. Tommy Musto and Joey Carvello, who's going to be here. Joey Carvello is going to be here next week. DJ Joey Carvello.
Another legend.
Legend. And on a Skype call, Jelly Bean Benitez.
Whoa.
So that's going to be a big show.
That's huge.
Joey is giving a nice little party tomorrow, June 13th at 35 East 13th Street. It's an after-work party. It starts at 7 p.m. So support, please.
Do you know I spun at Jelly Bean's wedding?
Wow.
I sure
Now
did.
that's a piece of trivia. Who did he marry that time? I know.
The lovely mother of his beautiful daughters. Have you seen his daughters, by the
Oh
way?
my God, they're gorgeous.
And they're DJs. Well, one is a DJ. Unbelievable.
They
Gorgeous.
They are really gorgeous women. Beautiful women. I want to talk to you about that too. But I want to say one more thing before we get started with Hex. And maybe to you. Maybe to you, Marvin, I'll talk about this. I don't know if Hex tuned in, but last night, you know, this is Pride Month. And Pride started June 28th, 1969. I know the date because I researched it well for my show, Hallelujah Disco. On June Hallelujah Disco.
Praise
On
Lord.
June 28th, 1969, it was the week Judy Garland died, and the village was packed. Packed. So when they pulled up the paddy wagon to the Stonewall Inn and started busting the transsexuals, all of a sudden, people fought back because the village was full. And those were called the Stonewall riots, and they started Pride. That's what we celebrate every June, and this month is the 50th year from the Stonewall riots. And something that happened last night, and I'm so glad it's happening during Pride Month, it was the premiere of the show, Pose. Now, I'm a big fan. I watched last year every episode, and I was crazy about it. Why? Because even though the characters are not true, everything that happens in the show is true.
True. Yeah.
And I keep telling people, Hex, I keep telling them, you want to make something about the 70s? Tell the truth. Don't make a thing like Vinyl with Mick Jagger and big directors and spend $1 billion on garbage.
Right.
You made up a story that made us look like clowns.
Yeah.
The real story is much better than any of that. And I didn't understand where Pose could go after a stellar first season.
Right.
Stellar.
I have a connection to the show. Did you know that?
Ryan?
My song that I produced with Matt Quayle, who was the composer for Pose, was playing at the end credits. So the end credits of season 1, episode 1, was a Hex Hector Matt Quayle production.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hex gets around. Wait until we interview him. Wait until you hear this. So anyway, I watched Pose last night, and I didn't know what to expect because, like I said, last year was so stellar that how could they top that? Well, they did. And I'll tell you what they did. They got very into what happened with the HIV, problems around the HIV, getting medications and people dying and the medications not being approved fast enough. They got into all that, and they used events that actually happened. It was new characters, but the events actually happened. Now, I just want to tell you briefly, in the early 80s, when people were dying of an unknown, they called it GRID, gay-related immune deficiency at the time, and people didn't know what it was. They were calling it the gay disease, the gay plague, and then drug addicts started getting it, and straight people, partners of the drug addicts, were getting it, and then it was no longer a gay disease, so they named it AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. And this very well-meaning playwright, Larry Kramer, decided he wanted to put together an organization that dealt with people with this disease that no one wanted to touch. People were in the hospital with HIV with their food left by the door, with sitting in their own feces for days on end until a friend came along and cleaned them up. Hex, as you know, in 1983, I stopped playing records and I started working only with PWAs, people with AIDS and people with HIV. And so I was in the front line of this. I saw everything that was going on. Larry Kramer started GMHC, Gay Men's Health Crisis. But what Larry didn't know is that it very quickly got bogged down in bureaucracy and did nothing. It's like our government. Yep. It just didn't move. So Larry had an idea. He wanted to start another organization that did things. And that organization was called ACT UP. And ACT UP had
silence equals death. Right?
Had a few slogans. One was silence equals death. And the T-shirt was all over. And let me tell you the first thing that they did. AZT came out. Now, AZT alone did not work. Nevertheless, at the end of people's lives, it did give them a few more months if you used it strategically at the end of the life. Not in the beginning like they were doing, but really when you needed it. And it was too expensive. People couldn't afford it. Insurance wouldn't pay for it. It wasn't proven. So Act Up got 20 people, and they handcuffed themselves to the stock exchange.
I remember that.
And it was all over the newspapers. And within 5 days, the drug company lowered the price of the drug.
5 days.
5 days. Within 5
Amazing.
days.
Amazing.
That's called real protest.
Now, I was with Act Up a lot. And one night, Reagan was in town, and he was staying on Park Avenue at his favorite hotel. Was it the Sherry Netherland? I forget the name of it. It was on Park Avenue between 48th, 49th. We're across the street carrying coffins, and everyone's yelling, "Murderer! Murderer!" And
I saw that.
and Reagan's across the street. All of a sudden, on the 15th floor of the building, from 48th to 47th Street, every window opens and sheets come hanging out. M-U-R-D, murderer, across the front of the hotel. Do you know
Wow.
what organization it took to do that? To get all those rooms on the 15th floor and have those sheets? It was amazing. Act Up was amazing. So last night, they recreated one of the most controversial actions that Act Up ever took. And I'll tell you why it was controversial. St. Patrick's Cathedral at the time and the bishop was saying, don't use condoms. We don't like Catholics to use condoms. Just abstain. Now, is abstinence really?
You got to be a little old, in your 60s to play abstinence.
It just, abstinence isn't really an option for people who are young, especially men who, when you turn 16, 17, and that testosterone starts going, your head is about to explode unless you get that load off. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that, right?
100%.
It's physical.
like that.
It's a physical thing. And what happened was they decided to go in during a service and to fill St. Patrick's with Act Up members and to lie on the floor and say, you're killing us. You're killing us. And it was very interesting. That's exactly what they did. They loaded it with members. All the members got out of the rows and they laid down in the aisles and they started saying, you're killing us. You're killing us. And one guy, and you don't see this anymore, had Kaposi sarcoma. And when AIDS first came around, Kaposi sarcoma was very prominent. It was one of the opportunistic infections, and it caused big purple lesions on your skin, often right on the face. And people would walk around with these lesions on their face. And one guy last night had lesions all over his face. It was so real. It brought me there because I was there.
It looked like Lazarus.
It brought me there. And then what did they do? They arrest people. And Act Up was ready for that. They had lawyers ready to get their people out. But nevertheless, people were arrested during those things. What they didn't show last night was one guy who was so fed up with the Catholic Church and all their bullshit towards gay people went up on the altar and grabbed the Eucharist, supposedly the body of Christ, and threw it on the floor. That gave Act Up a very bad reputation after that. And it's sad because they were doing tremendous work, and it was one guy who was just... and I know about that because in the 60s, I was molested by 2 priests. And I know what the Catholic Church can do to people. It could screw you up. So it was unfortunate that happened. But I have to say something about Billy. What's Billy's last name? The guy who won the Tony for...
Billy Elliot?
the guy
Porter.
Porter,
Oh,
Billy
Billy
Porter,
Porter, sorry.
who won the Tony for Kinky Boots. He is the talker, the guy who introduces
MCs.
the people who
Yeah,
pose.
master of
Right, the master of ceremonies.
Right,
Thank you.
right.
Thank you, Marvin. And he was incensed that one of the people didn't come to the action and that she stayed home to sew her costume while they were getting arrested in St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Wow.
And he put on a performance last night and said it all. And the one thing he said, and it struck me, he said, baby, with brown color, no one's going to take care of us but us. And that's it. And that was part of the club scene, especially in the early 70s and during the 70s. It was about a place to go where the disenfranchised had unity and
And
friendships.
friends that came from different places. It was like integration.
Right. A little closer to the mic. Put that thing in front. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was
like
integration.
Integrated, yeah.
And it wasn't just black or just
No, it
Puerto
was
Rican
everyone,
or
French,
Cuban.
Spanish, Italian.
You're right. No. I mean, even when I came up in the 80s, in the early 80s, nightclubs were always about inclusion and all races coming together.
Yeah.
You know, something happened in the 90s where that sort of changed. But during
Yeah.
the early 80s, it was still pretty much that kind of community.
What do you think happened?
You know, it's tough to say. You know, I was thinking about that the other day, and it's really tough to say. I think music was a big part of it. You know, when things started going into like hip hop, and hip hop became like a thing in the clubs,
Right.
And they had their own rooms, so it was like a certain crowd going there,
Right.
Some of the house kids going here. I think when they separated the music is when the people became separated. You know, and that happened around maybe the mid 90s, early 90s.
It's never one thing, but Hex.
Yeah.
It's just never one thing. I wanted to blame it on the corporate takeover of all the clubs because because
Yeah.
up until the 90s, you still had David Mancuso owning the Loft.
Yeah.
You still had vinyl owned by a little small family.
Yeah. Right.
You still had some clubs out there, but now it's a corporation.
Yeah. It's expensive. It's ridiculous. I mean, there are no clubs in Manhattan anymore.
And that's
Really?
why Brooklyn is so hot. And clubs are really, I mean, there's a person, I'm not going to name him because I don't want you going to his place, but he has a house and he has a fantastic sound system. And down his basement, he has the dance floor, and upstairs, he has the little area where you eat. It so reminds me of the early Loft, the first Loft. It's small. But baby, that sound system is over the top great. And the people who go there are going because they want to hear good music played on Class A audio. That's another thing, Hex.
Yeah.
You started installing, you do installations.
Well, I my partner does installations, my best friend, and I've helped on it. But yeah, I mean, I started back in the day where you had to carry your own speakers and your own amps. So I'm really well versed in like audio and Class A stuff and Macintosh, and so yeah, I mean, totally.
Yeah, I don't understand where, and I talked to Rosner about this when he was here, where all of a sudden people decided that we shouldn't put in good audio systems. We should just put in the cheapest ones,
Yeah, that's
the
not
loudest ones, which isn't always the best quality. So what happened again?
Yeah, money.
Budgets.
And also DJs became like an afterthought. You know, I knew this for a fact because I worked in all the big clubs where they spent millions of dollars, and then okay, we'll put the DJ here in a corner in a shitty fucking booth, and you know, it just became a thing to just devalue the DJ, and that happened in the 90s again.
All along in the 70s and 80s, people came to hear a certain DJ.
Yeah.
If a DJ was playing at a certain club, they would flock to the club. So the owners often came to the DJ and said, how would you like the setup? How would you like this here and that there? And the DJ would have a lot of input, and that's all lost.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that I cannot stand is every place you go, the DJ is behind the sound. How are you supposed to hear what you're supposed to be EQing and leveling out if you're behind it. You should be on the other side of it, have the sound coming towards you.
Right. I agree.
I know you do.
Yeah, but I also come from the school of like the DJ should be like heard and not seen, because now with the stages and all that stuff.
I'm not into the stages. I want it on the floor, across from the sound, so I can hear what the dancers are hearing. I want to be part of the dancers' experience.
Yeah. That's a lofty goal. I don't think I've
Lofty or gallery.
Yeah.
Both of them had those
I
kinds
think
of.
you know what? The only sound system I ever spun on like that was at Nell's in the basement, because that booth was right on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And you heard everything. It was amazing. But I don't think I've ever spun in a booth since then.
I went to a club one time, once or twice, and Junior Vasquez was there, and he was right in the middle of the. It was like I don't know, like it was called Baseline or something like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
The club.
And the DJ booth was right in the middle of the floor, and they had it roped off,
Okay.
and it got so crowded and crazy, and
Okay.
it just seemed, should I say, dangerous?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand.
dangerous.
That was our good friend Christina Visca's place.
Oh,
Oh, it was?
She
Oh,
opened
okay.
that with Junior.
Love her.
That was Junior's first New York residency.
It was a wild club.
Yeah, Baseline
And-
was great.
And where was he playing before that? Where did he come from, Junior?
I think that was his first. I don't know. I mean,
But he's a New Yorker, Junior? I mean,
Yeah, well, Junior.
I know you were born in New York.
Yeah, I mean, I think Junior became the DJ at Baseline because of his connections to Christina at the Garage, because Junior was a garage head back in the day, from what I hear.
Wait a minute. Christina was part of the garage
No,
crew?
she just hung out there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No.
I thought I knew all the important movers and shakers at the
Christina
garage.
was just a fan, and I think Junior was at the time, and I think because of their love of
Everyone was a fan of the
sure.
garage
Car,
at that
sure.
time.
Into the
I mean, if they
garage.
were 5 years earlier, it would have been the gallery.
Yeah.
It was the club of the time. Yeah.
for sure, definitely my time.
Yeah.
Being a 16-year-old going to the garage, summertime, 1982.
Which night did you go?
I didn't know
Friday nights?
Friday nights, yeah. I mean, I didn't know anyone for Saturdays. I heard about the Saturdays. Listen, a kid from Washington Heights, who do you know to get in on a Saturday night?
I got to say something, Hex. About a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, someone misread something on Facebook, and it said you were gay. And Hex is not gay, but what I loved about it, Hex, you didn't even fucking respond. You just ignored it.
Of course.
And only a person who's secure in his sexuality
Yeah, that's true.
would do that. And that's what I think everyone should be like. I know Fabian is that way.
Right.
He doesn't have to, tell, I say,
I'm that way.
No.
So, you laugh, but
Listen.
you don't
right.
know.
I
Nikki,
understand.
to be honest,
Me and you, baby, we know who's the man.
if I had a nickel for every time that was said, oh, Hex is gay, boy, I'd be a rich man.
Oh, you do real
I mean, I've heard stories, Nikki. It's crazy.
About me?
No, about me. that I got on stage at Sound Factory Bar and came out to everybody
no.
in
Yeah,
the
that-
crowd. It's like I was like, I think it's hilarious.
That
Personally,
was
it's funny.
How long did you play at Sound Factory?
Well, I actually did the first Factoria parties Thursday nights
Oh, cool.
Factoria.
for Rob Fernandez and,
Rob
and
was a-
Aaron.
Rob is was a great promoter.
May he rest in peace, our dear friend Rob Fernandez.
And also was Frankie's other half for a very long time, right?
Those two were birds of a feather. They were like peas in pod. Yeah, so missed. But yeah, it was supposedly during at that
Both of
party.
them are so missed.
At that party was where I legendarily came out to everybody, which is
Not
I
true.
Think it's great.
In
I
the
think
Sound
I think
Factory
It's
great.
funny
bar,
as hell.
The Sound Factory
Sound
bar.
Factory Bar Thursday
Where-
nights. Yeah.
That was a cool club.
Yeah, we did the 12 West parties there
Yes,
for
I've been to them. I
3
have
years.
pictures.
That's
I have,
right.
I have not an 8-track, but what was it? The VCR.
cassette.
I
Oh,
have
a
a couple
VCR.
of VCRs of that. Yeah.
Really?
I was looking at your the thing on on Wikipedia, and they're so wrong all the time. But one thing that I know is right. You won the Grammy in 2001.
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
2001.
for best remixer, and that was a brand new category. And I think the first person who won it was Louis.
No, actually, the first person was Frankie Knuckles.
No, he was the second.
No, it was.
No,
I believe it was
Frankie was the
and
second.
David.
Frankie was the
Are you
second.
sure?
Look it up.
Look it up.
Look it up.
Look it up.
Google
Frankie
it.
Knuckles, I think, was the
Google it.
first.
Go to the videotape, baby, because I am
Frankie.
right on this one.
Frankie.
Yeah, I thought for sure Frankie won it the second year.
Yeah.
And I went into his house in Chicago when I visited him, and I walked in and I said, "Where is it?" That's the first thing I said. "Where is it?"
Right.
That's it. It looks like a teardrop, sort of, with a big point.
It's actually pretty heavy.
It is.
Did you pick it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the real deal.
So, any other awards? No Emmys?
I'm working on that. I'm working on an Oscar and an Emmy. And I'm trying to get the composing thing going, as I told you with Pose. And I recently just also redid Wendy Williams, her talk show. We redid her theme show.
Her theme song?
Mac and I. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Because I watch Wendy a lot.
So
Ooh.
that's
Luther
me.
Vandross.
How you doing?
That's me.
Vandross
With
started that.
Fergie,
Fag.
Fergie on the vocals.
She sang?
She
Fergie?
sang. She re-sang. Yeah.
Wow.
So, were you in the studio with her?
Well, I was not. We had the vocals, and we actually gave them a track, and then she went ahead and redid some more to our track. So, but it was a time constraint.
Yeah.
She was on the
She's
West
in-
Coast, and we were
Oh.
here, so I had to get done.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's often done that way now.
Yeah.
You send them the track, and they say, "Oh, yeah, I really like it, but I want to add this here, and I want to change that there."
Right.
And you have them do one your way, and then one the way they want to do it. That's what I usually do.
Right.
I said, "Do it both ways, please."
Well, listen, I was fortunate enough to be able to do that with most of the singers that I remixed for, because
And the list is tremendous. I mean, some of the really big names: Tina Turner, Diana Ross, Deborah Cox. Now, this is a record. I was playing it before you got here. I started playing again, I think it was 96. So from 83 to 96, I stopped playing.
right.
After having played every Saturday night from 71 to 83
Wow.
in New York City. There was not a Saturday night where I didn't play records. First the Round Table, then the Gallery. When the Gallery closed for a few months, I was at this place called the Window Pane. Then the Gallery reopens, and then the day the Gallery closed, I was at Buttermilk Bottom the next week. So, and I was there until 83.
Wow.
And I played every Saturday night, sometimes Wednesday, Thursday at, New York,
That's
or
the way it
Les
was back
Jardins,
then.
or Studio 54. That's how I was the first DJ at Studio. I played the weekdays, and Richie Kazar played the weekends.
Right.
So I totally forgot what I was talking about.
That's okay. I wanted to ask you about that. Studio 54 always had that reputation of being like excess. The drugs, the celebrities, the really hard to get in, all that stuff. Whereas you had the Garage, which is, honestly, I know for a fact, a club that was inspired by you and what you did before that, as far as your innovations and being a DJ, the style of music, how you played it. I always thought to myself, okay, Larry, Kenny Carpenter, these are my heroes. These are my early heroes. But this was before I knew about you. And I told you how the only reason why I knew about you was through the Tiger Stripes record, the Move record.
Right.
And as my life went on and I got to learn more about the history, I realized that, holy shit, Nicky is the guy. Nicky is the guy that my heroes learn from,
Truly.
And I just wanted to say that, it's like,
Thanks.
But my question is that you, I felt were like caught in between those two worlds, right? You were the resident at Studio 54, but your mentality, your motivation came from the Garage, because that's who you
No, it
really
came
were.
from the Gallery.
From the Gallery. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
But my point
And
was,
myself, yeah.
at that time, the
That's
Gallery
why-
had closed.
That's why I got, well, and I went to Buttermilk Bottom. So I was continuing with the same crowd because they all came.
Right.
And it still had the same feel, which is a much more underground,
Right.
less commercial feel.
So was that was
And
my question. So did you play the same way
Okay.
that you did at 54 and at Buttermilks?
Unfortunately, I did.
You did.
And that's why I got fired.
Okay.
I mean, I'll never forget. I mean, it was about 4 months into it, and I had played for that big Bianca Jagger birthday party. And that birthday party, even though they had a fabulous opening night, they were starving during the week. The club was not popular,
Right.
except on the weekends.
That's the White Horse thing, right?
Right.
Right.
And then we did the Bianca Jagger, and I played for that party, and she wound up pushing the Bee Gees out of the centerfold in the New York Daily News, and it was all Bianca Jagger riding in on a white horse at
Right.
Studio 54. And then almost immediately, every night became packed. So, and you know what packed was at Studio. Did you go to Studio?
I in the 80s I did.
Okay.
I did, yeah.
1,500 people was, it was kind of okay, light, empty. 1,000 people, it was empty.
Right.
Okay. They had a scrim that they cut half of the dance floor off until there were 1,300 people in the room because it looked too empty when it was just 800.
It was a big old theater. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was huge.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, 3,000, sometimes a little bit more. And during the week, every night, they broke 2,000 every single night. So after that party, they started really doing well during the week. And then one night, I'm playing, and Steve and Richie, who was the other DJ, are talking on the balcony. Now, the balcony was the same level as the DJ booth.
Right.
I could hear what they were saying. And I had just gotten Trans Europe Express. I've told this story over and over. And
I don't know the story.
Okay. And so when I got a record like that, that had a very unusual kind of beginning,
Right.
I would let that record end and play this record from the very first. And that's exactly what I did at Studio. I let the record end, and I looked down to people, I smiled, and I just,
Yeah.
and I heard Stevie got up, and he turned around, and I heard him say, "What the hell is this record?" And that night, I was fired.
And
Are
studio.
you serious?
I swear to God.
Because you played Kraftwerk.
Trans Europe Express.
Trans-Europe commercial.
We're going to take 5 minutes to fix this thing. So we're going to shut down for just a few minutes so that we can get this audio fixed. Sorry, we'll be back. Okay,
Anybody
so
asking Hex
what were we talking about?
We were talking about Trans Europe Express.
Oh, right. Trans Europe
On how you
Express.
got fired from such an iconic record. A record that like
it wouldn't
inspired.
have been iconic if he hadn't played it in that kind of club because it was a rock and roll club.
Okay.
A rock and roll song. a
That
new wave
that
song.
was one of the issues. But the other issue was I was always ahead with the music.
Yeah.
Always. I was always picking the hits. And often, it wasn't good until you heard it 5 or 6 times. And then it was really good.
Remember
you
did.
That's how you broke records back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Played it 8 times one night. I know, Love Hangover.
Yeah,
must
Love
have played it.
Hangover.
Frankie said you must have played it 8 times that night. The night I got it. And then everyone lined up at Vinyl Mania, and he didn't have it because it was a promo. Make sure you're in your mic.
But remember when you did the Giorgio Moroder, but Nights in White Satin? You played
Yes.
that, yes. That was about for 2 weeks. And that was a really good song to start the night off. And it was just beginning with the electronic music.
That's
You
what
know,
you
I
miss
remember-
most about DJs, though, and nightclubs, is that whenever you went out and heard a certain DJ, because you knew he had these few songs that you would never hear anyplace else.
Well,
Right?
okay. Now you're talking about a different time than my time. Okay, so my time is most of the DJs had the same records.
Okay.
There weren't that many records out there.
Right.
Once in a while, a Soul Makossa would come along and Nicky would run to Brooklyn and almost get mugged and buy 10 copies. And so you only heard it at certain clubs
Right.
for about 3 months until Atlantic picked it up.
Right.
So it was about how the DJ played those records.
Well, it's always been about that.
Right.
Always.
It was
Even-
how, not only how he mixed them together, but how he charged it emotionally.
Yeah.
Like I charge things emotionally. I just played in Brazil, and I never did really great in Brazil. I did okay. This was great.
Wow.
And it was just more people knew me, and the thing was I was charged up that night and they felt it, and they came to me afterwards. They said, I never felt the records the way you.
Wow.
And I said, well, I was there when these records came out. It's a different kind of feeling when someone's 29 and they're playing Hit and Run by Lolita Holloway. She sang it to me from across the room.
Oh my God.
So it was a little bit of a
unbelievable.
different charge on the
sure.
record.
Sure.
Turn the Beat Around, that's another one. It became so popular, but boy, at the gallery, when it first came out, they started singing and rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat on the drum, and I let that go. It's in the movie. All the sound drops out, and all the people sing that because that was the gallery. It was about unity.
That
Yeah.
frantic moment.
It's emotionally connecting to the music, right? That's what
I
it is.
couldn't have said it better.
It's a
I mean,
connection. I
It
know.
is. It is.
It's my sick obsession. I mean, I can't get away from it. It's 40 years now for me. You know.
You know, I was talking to Fabian about this too, and for a long time, I was in therapy when I was a kid, even when the gallery opened, and I would tell the therapist, all of a sudden, magic comes into the room, and it explodes. And she said to me, what is that magic? And I said, I really don't know.
Yeah.
And she said, you better figure it out, because that happens to be your bread and butter. And if you don't know what that magic is, you're not going to be able to reproduce it over and over. And she was exactly right, because it started to be the drug combinations. Oh, I have to take this drug with this drug and then magic. And none of that worked for years and years.
Yeah.
And finally, I stopped playing. And okay.
Telephone.
Technology.
And there's something open in the background. And when I came back, because I had gotten sober and started meditating, I realized that the magic was getting out of my own way. It wasn't me, it was through me. And I had to find a way to quiet my ego and quiet my mind so that inspiration could come through me. And a lot of people would say, I'll be thinking of a record, and then you played it. Well, because we're all hearing the same thing.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I just allow it to come through. I don't second guess it anymore. I don't think, well, no, maybe this one's, no. Inspiration is inspiration.
Yeah.
And you can't second guess it.
No.
And you can't make it any better.
And you can't harness it either. You know, I mean, you can allow yourself to enter into that zone where you feel this magic, but that magic, there's different levels of it. You know.
Okay, by harnessing it, and I know exactly what Hex means. He means you're in a recording studio, you're booked for 2:00 in the afternoon, and you get there, and it's just not there. You don't. That inspiration is not coming through you right now. If something is wrong, we can.
We're good. Okay, we're good.
Okay, so you can't always call upon it.
Yeah.
You can't always step out of the way. I try to meditate a little bit. I say a prayer now before I go do a set. And the prayer is just, please allow me to get out of my own way.
Exactly.
But when inspiration does hit, I'll tell you, in 5 minutes, I could write a whole song, and I can write all the arrangement. I can write a bridge. I can write all the choruses, and they rhyme. It just comes out of me.
And you know it right when it happens.
Right when it
It's the
happens.
same thing with nightclubs. The minute I walk into a room and I play that first record, I don't know if you get this, but sometimes I play that first record and there's no one there, but I know that the night is going to be magic. And I don't, and to this day, I still have no idea how it is that happens. Because what are you judging? There's no one there. It's just you, security, bartenders. But you just know when you play that first record that something's gonna happen that night. You just know it.
You feel it coming through. You know that you're stepping out of your own way.
Yeah.
You could feel that. I know. I was I was on the train to the plane. I don't know why we can hear you a little bit. It's probably that mic on there. Is it? It's picking up as well as this? Okay. So I was taking the train to the plane,
Right.
park my car, and it just started coming to me, a song. And I'm standing in the corner with the iPhone. Tell me what you need when you want it. Yeah, I'm trying to sing what I'm getting because it goes away right away.
Yeah.
It goes away
Instantly.
Quickly. Yeah.
And as an artist, you know,
Yeah.
that's Marvin's artwork,
Oh, it is.
I did the Grace
cool.
Jones.
and that's his portrait of me behind you. No, the other way. Yeah,
Okay.
When he
Wow.
was, you know,
yeah. He's
back in the day.
Who knew? Marvin?
Oh, yeah. I'm a secret. I'm a
waiting
secret.
to be discovered.
Well, I've already been discovered, but you know, they know.
Keep it a secret.
Yeah.
The secret.
It's best that way.
Get the young
Then you get what
kids.
you want.
Get the youngsters on it, you know?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
There.
I love the youngsters.
He's got great
I wish they knew how to
t-shirts out.
dance.
Oh, the youngsters?
Yeah, I really do. I mean,
So
you know.
anyway, we were talking
But yeah.
about you, and I was going down a list of people you worked for, and I was talking about a record when you talked about the Studio 54, and I got to talk about this record because
Okay.
I had, like I said, it was, I think around 96, I started playing again. One of the first jobs I got was to go to Paris and play for Yves Saint Laurent's birthday.
Wow.
And it was at the Moulin Rouge it was at.
Moulin Rouge.
No way.
And Dimitri was opening,
Okay.
and I was playing after him. And this record I had just heard, and I put it on first, and they went crazy. Nobody's supposed to be here.
Huh.
I mean, it was massive,
Yeah.
that record. And Hex's mix of Deborah Cox, Nobody's Supposed to Be Here, was on the dance floor. It had to be like a year, at least,
Right.
that
Yeah.
it was everywhere. And here's...
How does that go a little bit? Because I don't. I was-
Oh, come on.
no, really,
Marvin.
I probably know it, but I just don't know the name.
That's okay.
Nobody's supposed to be here. How did you get here?
Wait a minute. So
Nobody's supposed to be here.
you actually did play it.
You don't know the song? She did a slow version. It was all over BLS every 5 minutes.
Right.
And Hex did the dance mix.
right.
Yeah.
And it was stellar.
a little
that
bit
was-
shady. Like, how'd you get up in here? Nobody's supposed to be here.
That's it.
Kind of that.
Okay.
Yeah, like discover new love kind
Cool.
of thing, you know? But that was kind of my thing. That's how I started. I got this reputation for taking these ballads and making them into these like dance floor things. So yeah,
Nice.
that was the kickoff of it. Actually, the one before that.
You didn't do I Believe in Love, Paula Call?
No, I didn't do that.
Okay.
No. But the one before, the single before that was the real push for my career, and for Deborah's, which was Things Just Ain't the Same.
Same.
yeah,
right.
that
yeah.
one I like.
Right.
That one was like the launch pad for both of us. You know, it began my production career, which is odd because
Really?
like that sound.
Because you had done tons of productions and
And mixes.
remixes before that.
Correct. Yeah, but this one really stuck. You know,
Right.
for some reason, and it just
Took
kept me
off.
busy for like 6 years. I had no life. You know, I was sleeping under the console.
Take it while you can.
Yeah, exactly.
And you do
exactly.
some things for money that you don't.
Well, you know, unfortunately, it was like it wasn't really who I was as a DJ. You know, that big kind of like drummy circuit ish sound.
It was a circuitous sound.
You know what I
was.
mean? It was.
I used to call it the gay
exactly.
dance floor sound. Yeah.
Exactly. It wasn't where I came from,
Right.
Because I came from the school of you.
Right.
I came from the school
Funk.
of Larry.
School of funk.
Soulful, and I injected a bit of that into these mixes.
Oh, you did. Absolutely.
But, in its core, it was very circuit and very, on the commercial
yeah,
tip.
but at the time, I mean, I think Junior was another big remixer.
Exactly.
And
Well,
his sound was very
was
much that.
And it influenced me as well, because I was always a big fan of Junior. You
Right.
know? I loved his residency at Sound Factory and
Right.
and what he was doing there. I thought it was really, kind of magical.
It was.
For that time, and
Was.
I got I don't want to say pigeonholed. It was the choice I made to make records like that, despite the fact that when I spun, I didn't really spin like that at all, which was
Right.
like the promoter's biggest complaint.
Did you ever play but the things that you...
I did a few of them, but that was like the promoter's biggest complaint about me.
that you didn't play
You're
the
not playing
mixes?
enough of that Hex Hector sound. It's like,
Oh,
well,
wow.
the Hex Hector sound is not really that. It's. I always viewed my
That's
production
really
career
hard.
and my DJ
Separate.
career as separate. They really were. So I
And-
was doing these big radio records, but I didn't want to play them when I went out. I wanted to play, the funky, sexy shit.
And especially, even if it's one that you want to play, sometimes you hear it so much, you're saturated, and you really just don't want to hear it again.
Exactly. Listen,
You're not inspired to hear it again.
just
And-
picture listening to the same song for 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
14, 15 hours a day. Just think about that for a second.
That's what mixing is.
I went to YouTube to sort of hear some of the music you played, and I said, "Oh, that kind of music."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
It's very commercial.
But that's
and
production.
dancey
But that's not what he
But
plays.
that's not what you play when you're
no,
at the clubs.
he doesn't. No,
Can't be.
He's much.
Yeah.
He's much more
I
into
probably-
the soulful funk.
I probably heard him play at some clubs. Like what?
Oh, you
what,
should-
what
I'm
are some
sure
of
you
the
did.
clubs
Oh,
played
my
at?
God! Just name a club. I've played.
Yeah,
at
he's-
pretty much them all.
Roxy,
He's
Roxy, the Tunnel,
the Tunnel,
Palladium,
You
USA.
played a long time at the Tunnel, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a resident. there. I actually
Oh, the
opened
Tunnel?
I opened the
At the
Tunnel.
Tunnel, yeah.
Well, I opened the Peter Gation version of the Tunnel.
Okay.
'Cause remember, it originally opened with Rudolph.
Right.
He was the original guy.
Right.
And then Peter took it over in '95. I was a resident at USA.
Oh,
And
yeah.
When did Grace perform there? During Peter's years or during Rudolph's
During
years?
Rudolph's years.
Yeah, because I remember I was there that
we
night.
went that night. You brought me to see
Yeah.
her saying "I'm not perfect."
Right,
Yeah.
and she jumped
Right?
off of the stage onto that pillow, like 25 feet, just fall.
Yeah.
And Bob Caviano, who was her manager, came over to me and I said, "Where's Grace? It's like an hour. She's an hour late. Nikki, she's in the green room. Would you go talk to her, please?" He said, "Why?" I said, "What am I gonna say
Well,
to
they
her?
pulled the
Nikki,
curtain
you could
up
talk to her."
They pulled the curtain on
Yeah,
her. She
I
didn't
mean,
want to come out.
I know she
Listen,
was.
to this day, the best nightclub performance I've ever seen was
Grace.
Was Grace.
Yeah.
Like no one could top it. I mean, that show she
Every
did at the garage
Every
with
performance.
the Keith Haring thing, and
Yeah,
I
and
was like,
and
oh
with
my
the
God.
lookalikes in different areas. Did you ever see?
I didn't miss a Grace show at the garage. That
She-
was like,
And everyone was unique, and everyone was fantastic. And I've seen her in Russia, and I've seen her on the road, and every time, Grace is fantastic.
Unbelievable.
She is just star quality times 50. And I'm so glad to have been such a instrumental part of her career. I mean, she talks about me in her book how I was the first person who dragged her down to a club to sing,
right.
and she sang at the gallery.
Did she sang? She also sang. There was. I don't know if you saw this. There's a video circuit on YouTube, which I thought was Studio 54. It's like an
that
hour
whoosh.
long video, but it wasn't Studio 54. It was Steve's club before 54.
Enchanted Gardens.
Enchanted Gardens.
Yeah,
it was
I
like
worked for him before. I worked there.
you did. So
Yeah.
that was you.
I worked there for 2 years almost.
There's like an hour video of like first it's like Grace performing. I think she did what was her first single? It was
That's the trouble.
That's the Trouble. She did That's the Trouble. And then I remember I could have sworn because I thought it was 54 because after she finished you hear Steve get on the mic and say, "Okay, Nicky, let's go." Right?
Oh.
That was
Listen,
me,
I
yeah.
swear to God, I watched this video. I got to send you the link.
Okay.
It's like an
I'd
hour
like
long.
to see it.
Wow,
and
me too.
and you see all the famous dancers from the era and the fashion people. It was amazing. And this whole time I thought it was 54, but it was actually the Enchanted Garden.
Enchanted Hellhole, we used to call it. We had our names for everything. What was the garage name? Come on, Marvin.
Garage.
No, come on.
What did they call it? Garbage?
No.
I don't
The
know.
Paradise Garage. It was the Parasite Garage.
Oh, I see.
You
I
never
wasn't-
heard that?
No, well, you know,
I never heard that.
Larry and I didn't get along when everyone was getting their free tickets. I
Right.
made a mistake and so I sort of didn't notice it was Larry. I was cruising somebody else, and Larry just, looked at me and did one of these numbers and went bam. And I hadn't spoken to Larry until after the garage. We became friends.
Wow.
But we were always,
How about
Larry
during-
knew that I was a fan of his.
How about during Reed Street? You didn't.
No,
to Reed?
that was before, but yeah, I knew him then, and gallery days. But when
Did you ever go to
when they
Reed
opened
Street?
Garage,
No,
that's when
was
it
Reed
happened.
Street after or before the
No,
garage?
Reed Street was
before.
way
Wow.
before him.
Listen,
No, it
come
was
on.
no, it wasn't before. It
Nick-
wasn't before. It was before the garage. It was.
Yeah,
he had
way-
already
yeah,
met. He
yeah.
had already met
Right.
Mike Brody,
Right.
and that was their first endeavor together. Right before that, he was at the Soho, which was Richard
The
Long's
Soho
club.
was an
Well,
intense
I-
club
yeah.
with the
I
snakes.
was
and
I was in grade school, so
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I might have been
before
like in
his
third
time.
grade. So yeah.
Do
I
you
missed it
play
all.
any instruments?
I do not play any instruments, and
Okay.
and I never wanted to learn how to play instruments.
And
I
when
could
you
I could
produce-
sit in the studio and work out chords. You
Okay.
know, that I can do.
How about lines?
But lines, no, I'm not a solo guy. I'm actually a strict chord guy. I can play bass lines, but I never wanted
I'm
to
talking
like,
about like
like recreate a song.
you know,
something
like
that.
the catch line, like you, dun, da, dun, dun, da, dun, da, dun, dun. You know, the certain line that you hear and it's, it's that song.
Yeah, no, I mean, from my work, yes, but from other works, no. I never really tried to emulate anything.
I mean, do you ever, are you ever in the studio? Because I don't play well,
Right.
so I end up singing it to the soloist or singing it to the
Right.
person, and
Oh,
I go,
yeah, yeah.
"Oh, play this."
Oh, sure,
And
sure.
Do
Listen,
you do that?
My partner in crime, Matt Quayle, is a classically trained musician.
Okay,
The guy is incredible. He's
So
just,
you just sing the part to him, or just say, "Well, maybe that
sometimes
one."
I'll just work something out and keep, it
try
depended.
this, try that.
Yeah, there was never one way. We just
Right.
went in and created. And I never really wanted to learn how to play an instrument, just because I always thought that if I did, I'd be locked into whatever it is I was learning, instead of just like having it come naturally.
And what do you do for? You lay down the rhythm track first, the drums.
Listen, there was no rhyme or reasons. I'm
Okay.
saying more times than not, we'd lay down drums and a
Mm-hmm.
rhythm. That's probably, 70%
Right.
of what we did in the studio first.
Now-
but there were other times where we just like come up with keyboard lines and just play them right over the vocals.
And
You know,
immediately, we
And
gotta
then,
have that keyboard.
and then the rhythm would come, quickly.
I wanted to talk to you about mixing in general, mixing records, because there was a time when I was mixing records, and then Larry, who was mixing a lot of records, would take what the producer gave them and improve on it, change the EQs, create more of a breakdown, loop certain sections, take things out, put things in. But somehow along the way, the mixing process by a DJ totally changed. And what it became was, here's the vocal, you create the track
Right.
completely.
Right.
Do you remember
I do
when that
remember.
happened?
Absolutely, it happened in the early '90s.
Right.
Early to
That's
mid
what I
'90s.
thought.
That's when it happened. Because before that, from what I remember, because this is before my time, yes, you get the entire production and you get to sit in the studio and do your cuts. That's actually how I learned.
And go over each track and hear
Correct.
what's on this track. Okay, that's some of this is good, some of this isn't good.
I learned that method from CNC Music Factory, David Cole
Right.
and Robert Clavillis. So they took me under their wings, and I actually sat in a room with a 64-track SSL board
Wow.
and just like get lost in it. That's how I started. Yeah.
64, and I thought 48 was a lot. I mean, I worked on a 48. Now, in the old days, one of the days he's talking about before digital, there was, and I've talked about this before, it was a 2-inch tape, and it was 24 tracks. Now, if you're going to 64 tracks, you've got 3 machines running, and they're linked together so that when you press on one, they all start up at the exact same point. Right. And sometimes things go terribly wrong with those, but it's only 24 tracks is the maximum on those tapes. Right. It's about, how do they call that linking? The
sync. They used to sync.
They sync the machines, but they call it slave. They slave the machines to each other. Right. They master and slave the machines to each other. And I worked on 48. I did one record on 48, but mostly it was 24 until I got to digital, when, it's as big as your processor and your memory allows.
Which is funny, because as soon as I went to digital and started working at home outside of the studio, I try to go less. I try to go back in the old days where it was 24 tracks. So when I get to 24 track, I try to keep it there.
Less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more. You don't need, you don't need 68. You don't need that stuff. No. It just sounds crowded to me. Lady Gaga, and God bless her soul, on her first album, it was so minimal, the tracks. They were great. They were so moving. Right. And her second album, which had some better songs, but had way overproduced productions, lost me until she went on Howard Stern and sang the songs with the piano. Yeah. And then I got into Head and all the other songs.
I caught that. I was never a fan of Gaga's. Not really. I wasn't.
Okay.
But then when I saw her on Stern, and
amazing,
just sitting at a piano, just her and an acoustic piano, I was like blown away.
And what was that one she wrote for her aunt's death?
Was it called Hair?
No, Hair was the other one that I was talking about.
Okay.
And Howard, the uninformed person that he was. Right. Oh, you're into the show Hair too?
That's what I was thinking about.
You can't blame Howard.
Yeah,
he's from a different world.
And if you ever go on YouTube, catch Gaga doing Hair in Paris. She wears this big thing, and they take it with ropes, and it changes. It's amazing.
She's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing.
She's a true artist.
But the other one was just a ballad that was so moving to me. Along the Edge. Joanne? No, that's not it. Okay. No, it's
Joanne.
Something about the edge. Something about the edge, yeah. I'm on the edge of darkness.
I remember when she was in the crazy house.
Darkness.
Right. I do remember the song.
Yeah, the edge of something, yeah. And that song was so brilliant with just her and the piano, and I went, why didn't she do this on the album? I mean, what happened was, and it's really clear to me, she became so famous so quickly, and she wanted to work with this one and that one and this one and that one. So she invited them all, and they all did tracks, and she felt like she had to put all their shit on the record. And it was an overproduced masterpiece that was overproduced. I would have went in there and took out 7 tracks of everything.
You mean Born This Way or something like that?
Yeah, Born This Way. That was.
Is that the one where she's in the crazy house and she wakes up and
did you find the edge of, what is it called?
Joanne.
Oh, Joanne. That's a different. Yeah.
It was,
I'm not. I don't.
Auntie's name was Joanne.
It's not Joanne. I'm on the edge of darkness. Well, anyway, so you learned the other way, and then did it take a lot of, well, maybe we shouldn't do it that way, or he played that guitar lick really good. Why not use his version?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, by the time I became prominent in the studio, that was done already. It was gone. You were just getting vocals. I was just getting vocals. And, from time to time, I'd get, separated. I did I don't remember the artist. I think it was a Backstreet Boys record. and it was produced by Nile Rodgers,
Oh,
right?
oh.
So being a big fan of disco, I was like, you know what, I need those guitars separate.
Oh, yeah.
I needed that, because Nile is rhythm guitar.
Oh my God,
Unbelievable.
He's the master.
And
of
I made the
rhythm.
whole track about the rhythm guitar. So, but more times than not, no, it was just a vocal,
Mm.
And if you really wanted something from the original, you can get it. I mean, more times than not, a lot of my contemporaries were just throwing everything away and just starting from scratch.
What did you do? You built a studio in your home, or you?
I had
your partner has a little studio.
We all had studios. I had a little home studio where I'd start stuff and bring it to the studio, where Mac was, and vice versa. He'd come to my place, so it was just craziness back then.
And Mac or Windows?
Oh, totally Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But they have
The old beige Macs.
baby. They have turned their back on us.
Mm.
Mac has really turned its back on the people who kept it afloat, the artists, for all those lean years.
Correct.
They have turned their back
They
on
sure
us.
did. Well, you can thank the iPhone for that.
Yeah.
They became very focused on the iPhone and became the biggest company in the world. It's crazy how much.
And it just kills me because I have Final Cut Pro there, and it's huge. And I did my movie in it. It's a wonderful program.
Right.
And then they do this Final Cut 10 that's a piece of garbage. And Logic, it killed me. Logic was such a great program. And then they released this piece of garage band heavy.
Yeah.
That was the new Logic 10. And I didn't want to run it. And the new versions of their operating system won't run Logic 9.
That's crazy.
It won't run it anymore.
They don't want to appeal to the artist anymore. They're appealing to the mass. They're making it easy.
To the mess.
They're making it to the mess.
Yeah, the everyday
It is
guy.
definitely appealing to the mess because Mac and Apple were all about the artists. They were all about the photographers, all about the musicians, and now
All about the artists,
Yeah, yeah.
the layouts. I remember the little one-piece Macs where you could make a flyer and actually see on the screen what it was going to look like. Whereas in Windows, you had to know all the commands and you never saw it until it printed out what it would look like. And the Mac was, at the very beginning, it was giving you the graphic. Oh, it was like just amazing.
That's all I know. I've never really done PC ever.
Ever? I did. I mean, I was totally, I started very early on with computers and started with a Tandy from Radio Shack. And this was in the 80s.
Wow.
So I learned Windows first, and I was kind of reluctant to give it up. Even when I was learning the music programs, I started with Cubase and a bunch of things that were good on the Windows machines, and I was comfortable with it. But then I said, I got to do this.
Yeah.
I got to do the Mac.
Yeah.
And my first one was a dual G5.
G5. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those were the good days.
Yeah, they were.
It was.
I know.
fun.
Sometimes I think, oh, let me buy one of those old, dual G5s, So, there's so much to talk about with you.
Oh, Lordy.
I mean, you just go, you have your hands in a lot of different pots. And it seems like you're really into now moving forward with a larger scale version of what you're doing, or a different medium,
maybe I don't want to say larger. Maybe just a different scale,
Yeah.
completely different.
and a different medium for because you deserve it. And all the time, like I'll say, well, Rain by Dorothy Morrison, that was the first record I remember at the Loft that really attracted to me. I turn around and one of the things on Netflix is a scene in the Loft, the guy's walking in, and what song are they playing? Rain. So,
Wait,
like,
what are you talking about? What scene was that? What show was that?
it was from the Get Down.
Oh,
Really?
yeah.
Really?
Rain is a good record. That was very popular.
I never caught that.
It was David's Loft, and he walked in, and I texted the guy on Twitter, and I had this conversation with him because I was at the Loft back then, and it wasn't exactly pearly white. It was really all African American, maybe 5%. white people.
Right.
And their version was
Oh, that's why they
70% white and 30% people of color. And I said to the guy, I said, well, you got most of it right, except there weren't that many white people there. You really did it. Oh, no. There were people of color there. You have to look. Well, if I had to look for them, then it ain't the fucking Loft.
Yeah, that's why they didn't renew that show.
The movie,
It wasn't good.
That's the movie business for you. You know, they take certain liberties. Although there was remember that final scene in Vinyl? Terrible show.
Oh,
but that
horrible.
last scene though was really good. When that guy and he's walking into Wild Safari.
I couldn't.
I know.
I couldn't watch it
bad.
anymore.
I tried.
You know
I
what
stuck
killed
with it.
me? Vinyl was a show on HBO where it was supposed to be about the 70s club scene. And one of the scenes, this is when I turned it off. One of the scenes was the woman went down the 2nd Avenue subway stop. And back then, there was graffiti in the subways. Right. Well, every inch of every surface was covered with cartoon-colored graffiti in that scene. Right. It was so overdone. Right. It wasn't like that. No. It wasn't like that. And it was so overdone and so cartoonish that I just said, why am I watching this?
Right.
The truth is much more compelling than this bullshit.
Yeah. But
we should get together and do the truth.
Yeah.
I have a great story. I know what the story is.
Right.
It's just, drama is created by conflict. Yeah. And conflict equals drama. And that's what it's got to be about. It's got to be about conflict. And there was a lot of conflict with the disco movement and other varieties of music.
You know, speaking of conflict, did you see what's going on now with Chicago? Did you catch that, Nicky? Yeah.
Chicago.
Wait a minute.
The city and
no. Do you remember the Disco Sucks blowing up the disco?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Chicago White Sox this year decided it was a good idea to release 18,000 T-shirts commemorating that night.
Kaminsky Park.
Kaminsky Park, which is now whatever
right.
whatever they're calling it now.
The Disco is Dead night.
The Disco is Dead night. And they think it's a good idea, 50th anniversary of Pride.
Nothing else better to do.
To release T-shirts commemorating that racist, homophobic night. I mean, I'm beside myself.
It's really interesting that you said that because we had a discussion about that night recently. I had a discussion with someone and I said it was about the straight people taking their power back. Some of it. I mean, there was a few different factors, but a lot of it was, I'm straight and I'm tired of going to these fag clubs with my girlfriend because she wants to go out dancing. Because all the women loved to go out dancing and the guys just didn't want to go out with them. So they'd go out with their gay friends and then they were forced to go out with them and sleep with the gay guys too. No one forced you to do that, honey.
Well... That's a whole nother discussion.
No one forced you to go that far.
But yeah, I'm just shocked that they thought it was a good idea to do this, and
it is shocking.
And even as a kid, as a 14-year-old, I remember this damn rally and thinking to myself, what's wrong with these people? They're destroying art. What gives them the right to destroy someone's art? I mean, that's really what it is. You don't see a bunch of us Latinos and blacks going, let's burn these Rolling Stones records or these Who records. We love those records. We love those records. I'm a big fan of all music. I'm a fan of music.
Me too.
Country, jazz, whatever it is, I'm a fan.
I always tell people when I was playing in 71 and 72, there just wasn't enough club music.
Yeah.
You had to play anything that was danceable. And so many rock records made it to those turntables.
For sure.
So many gospel records made it to those turntables.
Yeah,
I mean, they would just, Bonnie Bromlett, Crazy About My Baby. All those things. Rain by Dorothy Morrison, that was not a club record,
Right.
It was a gospel. All God's Children Got Soul. All those things were a direct result of us wanting to dance.
Just loving music. Even Larry and David would play rock records. They'd play,
oh yeah, of course.
I remember, Larry
Lanzana's Priestess.
Yeah. Larry dropping Lucky in Love. or Eminence Front by the Who. I mean, that was
Life
a
During
record.
Wartime he used to play by by the Talking
Magnificent
Heads.
Seven, the
Oh
Clash.
my God.
The Clash. I mean,
Started
that
with
song,
Clash.
he really played that song
Magnificent
to
Dance,
death.
Let's Dance, David Bowie.
Spasticus Artisticus.
Oh, yeah.
Ian Dury and the
Madness.
Blockheads. I mean,
Good
the list
music.
goes on. Good music,
Good music is
regardless
good
of
music.
genre.
Yeah.
Great music is great music, and that's what I miss about music in general. Everything is so compartmentalized. Oh, you got to play house music to this crowd,
Yeah.
or techno to this. You know, what's wrong with just playing music? You know, there's music out there that you can play that anybody would get into. The thing is, the DJ's got to feel it, and most of the DJs feel that they got to please a certain kind of audience.
Yeah,
you
when
know?
I first started playing records again, I was playing this mixture of, I was going to Body and Soul, and I loved that 90s, late 90s house music.
Right.
It was like some of the best
Absolutely.
ever. And I loved playing those records, but I also loved the old music, and I was playing both.
Right.
I was going from that to that to, and
Which
people.
is what Body and Soul was about too. You know.
Yeah, that's what Body and Soul was about. And I remember going to Switzerland, and they liked it, but they weren't sure. It was like, this is too, again, ahead of your time, Nicky. You know, it's like they weren't sure of
Right.
whether this should have gone together, these two kinds of music. And there's no reason why good music should not be played in a night with other kinds of music. It's just, if you can dance to it.
I come from that school of thought, 100%. You know,
Do you
sometimes
know-
I just don't even mix. I'll just drop something in there and just let it fly. And listen, more times than not, those kind of moments became the moments of the night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, always do.
It's because, you know, it's something out of the norm. It's something different that they're not used to. You got to keep them off balance sometimes. You know, give them something they're not expecting to hear.
Yeah.
Yes. And people love that.
Yeah.
They love that. Do you know Oba Lovinyela?
No,
Love Obla Lovinyela
I
by
don't know what it
Jorge
is.
Ben.
It sounds like
Okay.
something I'd love.
So
Brazilian, obviously.
beautiful.
Brazilian record came out in 1971.
Okay.
And back then, it was very hard to get. And I remember David Rodriguez and I went into a mastering studio and made acetates of the one copy that we had. And we all had a copy of that acetate.
Sunshine Sound? Is that
Yeah,
where you went?
Sunshine Sound.
course.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So an acetate is it's a vinyl, but it has a plate in it, and you can actually make the grooves right there from another record, and it's only good to play 10 times, and a lot of times they lose their quality on the high end, but we just kept playing that record, and I loved it. And recently his greatest hits came out and everything, and I always played that record, and I was just in Brazil and I played the record. They all knew the words. It was a magical moment.
Right.
Magical
I
moment.
think my first Sunshine acetate that I ever got was Happy Song or Dance by Rare Earth.
Yeah.
Because back in those days, in the 90s, or I'm not even, no, I'm talking about in the 80s, you couldn't find that record anywhere.
It was really hard. You know, people have such access these days with Discogs and Track Source and Beatport. You don't have no idea what it was like back then. And you couldn't even call and get an answer from people because they didn't want to pick up the phone. No. They didn't want to do that. They are New Yorkers. You had to go to each record store and find a record.
It was crazy. I mean, I'd pull my hair out because I was such a
Colony was
Colony,
the place.
and
Colony
you know,
was good.
Well, Colony was before my time. By the time
Right.
I came up, Colony was just sort of like selling sheet music mostly.
Do you remember Nick from
Of course I remember
downstairs?
Nick. But my guy was Manny Lehman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Manny Lehman was a friend, and he always gave
Vinyl-mania.
me what was underneath that counter. I was one of those lucky few, because there were the times where Larry would drop these records, and then I'd wait till the end of the night. I don't care how tired I was. I'd wait till this damn club closed, because I knew that when it closed, Vinyl Mania was opening. And I go right to it.
And they only had 5 or 6 copies
Exactly,
because
and I'll
they
never
didn't
forget.
order a box until it was a hit. And Larry made it a hit that night.
Correct. And I'll never forget the time Larry played Time Warp. The first time I heard that,
Oh my God.
I literally lost my shit. I was like, I think he played it 3 times back to back, the whole thing.
Did he play the vocal from the beginning, or
He
just
played
it was just the
instrumental into the vocal? You know, Larry did what he did. He just broke that record for me that night.
That vocal. Everybody's got time.
Oh my God.
Got time. Oh my God!
It still sounds
kills
amazing
me.
today.
Oh, it's got.
That was very Larry Levan.
That
Now
record-
that was a record that made me go to Larry Levan's parties.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
So
when you get into that,
that night, I was like, into that morning, I'm like, you know what? I'm waiting. Because I got the name of the song. I knew security. And he told me it was called Time Warp. I'm like, I waited. I was dying. And I went
Eddie Grant.
I went into Vinyl Mania, and sure enough, Manny had a couple copies down underneath. He gave it to me, and I was like, I felt like I discovered, like, you know, the fountain of youth. You know what I mean?
The treasure.
I went home and I played it. I don't know, all day.
You know, that vocal is hard to get now.
It's
You
hard to
can
get, yeah.
you can't get 100.
And it was on the flip side.
Yeah.
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 Ice Records. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't find it for a while, and finally did find it and get it.
And that's the thing about music. It's like, who you think about who made this? Eddie Grant, you know, a Jamaican Rastafarian, you know, dub guy.
Questions?
And like, you know, it's amazing. It's amazing how like
I know.
music transcends, and you just don't know where it's coming from.
yeah,
you know?
remember Fela and Manu Dibango?
Oh, my
Fela was-
God.
Fela. Yeah.
He would do the one Zombie. Zombie
yeah.
don't go until
Yaya
you tell
the
her to.
Smell was the first one that was Ginger Baker, and
Oh, I remember
that was it.
Woo.
That was from the Loft.
Yeah.
And I mean, we loved it because it was 12 minutes long. And do you know the song,
No.
Yaya the Smell? Oh, my
No,
God.
no.
It's
Ginger Baker, the rock
Ginger
guy?
Baker,
From,
the rock guy, with Fela Ransom Kuti, the father, and not Femi, but Fela.
Fela,
And
yeah.
and it's amazing. It's an amazing. Nobody's
that.
got time. Nobody's got time. So
Speaking of which,
yeah, you got time.
I don't got much, but
Okay.
we'll make it happen.
Okay. No, well, it's over. It's over. And that was a big
It's
one.
over
too.
now, yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
that was that record where I sampled Bad Luck. You know, the
Right.
remember that? So
Right. So
I think that back in the day, like I had done the original version, and it was cute, you know, straight up circuit,
right.
great Deborah record. But then I got this idea because I was like listening, because my ears were really good with tuning and chords and stuff.
Right.
And I was like,
That's in the same
Bad
key.
Luck. And sure enough, I got the record out and I played it over on top of the act, and I was like, whoa. So we did it, literally 6 hours from soup to nuts, that version. And the label, Arista, they flipped. So much so that they went to Philly to get to guarantee the rights
Mm-hmm.
from Philadelphia International, and I think they charged them some crazy like $30,000 for like
that.
for like a 4-bar sample.
Less than a minute.
It was 4 bars.
Like 4 bars.
It was 4 bars. That's
It's like
15 seconds.
Yeah,
you know?
15 seconds.
But they had to do it. They had to
So,
Is
Wow.
that a record cover?
Hex Your Ex. That's interesting. Hex Your
A
Ex.
flyer.
bad
Bad
luck
luck
for
for you.
good.
Interesting.
And other
Bad luck.
spells.
It's
Is there something
It's a
else?
play on words.
Any questions?
Okay.
No questions.
No questions.
Okay.
That's okay.
I just want to.
We got people tuning in from Australia,
Australia.
Australia.
Glasgow.
Hi, Holland.
Yes.
Hi, Glasgow.
They love the conversation.
Great, great.
And you're in London.
I'm in London this Saturday night. I am at POW, Prince of Wales Pub in Brixton. And it's my only London gig this year. I'm doing other shows in London, but I'm doing Hallelujah Disco for Manchester Pride. And I'll announce those later on. What we want to concentrate on is Saturday night. Come to the Prince of Wales. It's going to be
Wow.
fun. We're going to dance. We're going to play some things you haven't heard before.
Isn't it just amazing how like your life has come full circle, like from when you started, and then all the new people discovering who Nicky Siano is, and
Yeah, it
how
was.
important you are to the scene and our culture in general. I think it's just extraordinary.
It was really weird because one night, at that party at the Sound Factory bar. We were doing the 12 West party. And I had on Love is a Message. And I was mixing into Love is a Message back to back. And I had this jet plane that I had discovered and played over that for years. And put it on right in the spot I always put it on. And someone came up to the booth and said, "You're doing a Larry Levan."
Oops.
And I was like, "Sorry, honey,
Oops.
but Larry was doing a Nicky Siano for many, many years." And now people know, this almost 25 years later from that, people know, well, Nicky really did all that. And that's where it all comes from. And Larry wanted to be a designer when I met him. So did Frankie. And they worked for me for 2 years at the gallery, blowing up balloons and decorating before they started to think about playing records. And then I'll never forget, we were closed one night and we're in the booth, Larry and I, and he said, "Nicky, can I play a couple of records?" And I said, "Sure." And that's the way it was back then.
Yeah.
Please give GoFundMe.com/Nicky Siano Live. We want to keep this free and keep it going. Just $1 is a donation. Anywhere in the world you can donate. If you want to give more than that, we've got great things listed as incentives. Hex, thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Nicky. I mean, I'm still like shaking here.
Shaking.
It's like this.
Hex has been so welcoming to me from the minute that I started playing again. Hex has been just so welcoming and so loving.
Yeah.
I really have to say thank you.
No,
Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Nicky.
Thank
And
you.
you've given me so much, and I'm glad I'm realizing this later in life because now I can really appreciate it.
Right.
I can appreciate
Exactly.
where I come from, and you're my history. You're my blueprint. You are the reason why I do what I do. You are the reason why I brought this music to Washington Heights. Like all these kids who follow me, who revere me as someone like yourself, for quote unquote providing them with the soundtracks of their lives. I always, for the longest I thought it was and now I'm realizing that it's a Nicky Siano thing. And I can't be any more eternally grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Keep the dream alive. Love is the message. Thank you, guys. Good night. Good morning.
Come on, let's go.